The doorbell rang at exactly 7:30 p.m. Mark froze, his son's half-packed lunch forgotten on the counter. Nobody was supposed to be at his door tonight, especially not Katherine Wells, the notoriously demanding CEO who had made his life at Meridian Tech a living nightmare for the past 8 months. Yet there she stood on his doorstep, her usual tailored suit replaced by jeans and a casual sweater, holding what appeared to be a bottle of wine and wearing an expression he'd never seen before, uncertainty. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more content like this. Your support means everything to our channel. 3 days earlier, Mark had sent what he thought was a heartfelt message to his ex-wife about their son's upcoming birthday. A message accidentally delivered to his boss instead, a message that revealed far more about his struggles as a single father than he'd ever wanted his ice-cold employer to know. Mark Sullivan hadn't planned on becoming a single dad at 34. He hadn't planned on his wife leaving him and their 5-year-old son, Ethan, for a new life across the country. And he certainly hadn't planned on working under Katherine Wells, whose reputation for being brilliant was matched only by her reputation for being utterly merciless. Life at Meridian Tech had been manageable before Katherine took over as CEO. Mark had been able to balance his work as a senior software developer with Ethan's school schedule, doctor's appointments, and the countless other responsibilities that came with solo parenting. But Katherine's arrival had brought 60-hour work weeks, mandatory weekend sessions, and a culture of fear that had the entire company walking on eggshells. Mark had been surviving, barely, until last Friday night when, exhausted after putting Ethan to bed following another week of impossible deadlines, he'd opened his messaging app to text his ex-wife about Ethan's birthday plans. "Jamie, I know we haven't been on the best terms, but Ethan's birthday is coming up next weekend. He misses you. I miss the person I could share these parenting challenges with. Some days I feel like I'm drowning, working for a woman who doesn't understand that I can't stay until 9 p.m., that I can't come in on Saturdays, that I have a little boy waiting for me at home who already lost one parent. I'm trying my best, but sometimes it's not enough. Please call me about the birthday. Ethan would love to hear your voice." It wasn't until Monday morning, when Katherine had walked past his desk without her usual barrage of questions about project timelines, that Mark had realized his terrible mistake. He'd sent the message to K. Wells instead of J. Wells. His heart had plummeted to his shoes as he scrolled through his recent messages and confirmed his worst fear. For 3 days, Katherine had said nothing about the text. She'd been oddly quiet around him, in fact. Mark had been waiting for the axe to fall, for the dismissal, the public humiliation, or whatever punishment she deemed appropriate for his unprofessional message. Instead, she was at his door on a Wednesday evening, looking nothing like the formidable executive who struck fear into the hearts of everyone at Meridian. "May I come in?" she asked, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. Mark stepped aside wordlessly, his mind racing. Ethan was already asleep upstairs, having crashed early after a day at kindergarten. The house was a mess, toys scattered across the living room floor, dishes piled in the sink, laundry waiting to be folded on the couch. "I should have called first," Katherine said, taking in the chaos with observant eyes. "But I thought you might not answer if you knew it was me." Mark found his voice at last. "Ms. Wells, I want to apologize for that message. It was completely inappropriate and—" "Katherine," she interrupted. "Please call me Katherine outside the office." She held up the wine bottle. "I thought we might need this for the conversation we're about to have." Mark led her to the kitchen, hastily clearing a space at the table while she opened the wine and found glasses in his cabinet with surprising ease, as if she were comfortable making herself at home in unfamiliar spaces. "I'm not here to fire you, Mark," she said as she sat down. "Though I understand why you might think that." "Then why are you here?" he asked, accepting the glass she offered. Katherine took a deep breath. "Your message, it made me realize something. I've been so focused on turning Meridian around, on proving myself in this position, that I've been blind to the human cost. Particularly to people like you." Mark stared at her, unable to reconcile this woman with the CEO who had once made a project manager cry during a quarterly review. "I don't have children," she continued. "I've never had to choose between a sick child and an important meeting. But my father was a single parent after my mother died when I was 8. I watched him struggle with those same impossible choices." She took a sip of wine before continuing. "He worked for a man who showed him no mercy, no understanding. My father missed school plays, parent-teacher conferences, even my high school graduation because his boss wouldn't give him the flexibility he needed." Mark saw something in Catherine's eyes he never expected: vulnerability, and perhaps even pain. "I swore I would never be that kind of leader," she said quietly. "And yet here I am, having become exactly what I despised." The silence between them stretched, filled with the ticking of the kitchen clock and the distant hum of the refrigerator. "I don't want your pity," Mark finally said. "I just need a job that allows me to be both a provider and a father." Katherine nodded. "That's why I'm here. Not to offer pity, but to offer change. Real change at Meridian, starting with our work-life policies. And I want your help to shape those changes." Before Mark could respond, a small voice came from the doorway. "Daddy? I had a bad dream." Ethan stood there in his dinosaur pajamas, clutching his worn stuffed tiger. His eyes widened at the sight of a stranger at their kitchen table. "Hey, buddy," Mark said gently, opening his arms. Ethan ran to him, climbing into his lap. "This is Ms. Wells. She works with Daddy." Katherine smiled at the boy, her face softening in a way Mark had never witnessed. "Hello, Ethan. I've heard a lot about you." "You have?" Ethan asked, curiosity temporarily overriding his shyness. "Your dad talks about you all the time," she said, which wasn't exactly true. Mark had been careful to keep his personal life separate from work, but it felt right in the moment. "Do you like dinosaurs?" Ethan asked, his standard question for evaluating new adults in his life. Katherine's smile widened. "I do. Especially Triceratops. That's my second favorite." Ethan exclaimed. "T-Rex is first." "A classic choice," Katherine nodded seriously. "Would you like to tell me about your bad dream while your dad makes you some warm milk?" Mark watched in amazement as his son began chatting with Katherine about the monster in his closet. He moved to the stove to heat milk, stealing glances at the unlikely pair. Katherine listened to Ethan with complete attention, asking questions and offering reassurances with a natural ease that belied her reputation. By the time Ethan was ready to go back to bed, he had extracted a promise from Katherine to come to his birthday party that weekend, an invitation Mark would have never imagined extending just hours earlier. After tucking Ethan in, Mark returned to find Katherine staring at the refrigerator door, covered with his son's artwork and school photos. "He's wonderful," she said without turning around. "You're doing an incredible job with him." "I'm trying," Mark replied. "It's not always pretty, but we're making it work." Katherine turned to face him. "That's what I want to talk about. Making it work, for you and for all the parents at Meridian. I've been driving everyone like we're all single 20-somethings with nothing in our lives but work. That has to change." They talked for hours that night, long after the wine was gone. Katherine shared stories about her father's struggles, about her own workaholic tendencies that had cost her a marriage years ago. Mark told her about the day Jamie left, about learning to braid Ethan's stuffed animal's yarn hair because his son insisted they needed hairstyles, about the constant fear of failing at both work and parenting. By midnight, they had outlined a new approach to work-life balance at Meridian: flexible hours, remote work options, a parent resource group, and emergency childcare services. Katherine took notes on her phone, occasionally stopping to ask questions or propose additions. "Why are you doing this?" Mark finally asked as she prepared to leave. "One text message couldn't possibly have changed your entire management philosophy." Katherine paused at the door. "It wasn't just the message, Mark. It was seeing myself through your eyes, seeing what I've become. Sometimes we need a mirror held up to recognize when we've lost our way. She smiled slightly. Besides, I've been losing good people. The company can't afford to lose someone with your talent because I'm too rigid to accommodate real life. The changes at Meridian didn't happen overnight, but they began the very next day when Katherine announced a company-wide review of work policies. Mark found himself appointed to head a committee on family-friendly workplace initiatives, a role that came with both a raise and more flexible hours. The most surprising change, however, was in Katherine herself. The Ice Queen began to thaw, revealing a leader who could be demanding without being cruel, who could drive excellence without sacrificing humanity. She started holding walking meetings, checking in with team members about their lives outside work, and even instituted a strict, no emails after 7 p.m. policy that she herself adhered to religiously. Ethan's birthday party that Saturday was a small affair in the local park, just a few friends from kindergarten, Mark's sister and her husband, and, to Mark's continued amazement, Katherine. She arrived with an enormous dinosaur-themed Lego set that made Ethan shriek with delight and a casserole dish of homemade mac and cheese that she sheepishly admitted was her father's recipe. He made this for every special occasion, she told Mark as they watched Ethan and his friends chase each other around the playground. It was the only thing he knew how to cook well. It's delicious, Mark said, genuinely impressed. I had no idea you could cook. Katherine laughed, a sound Mark was still getting used to hearing. There's a lot you don't know about me, Sullivan. I contain multitudes. As the afternoon wore on, Mark found himself watching Katherine interact with the children, his sister, the other parents. She was different here, relaxed, quick to laugh, attentive. When she helped Ethan open his presents, her delight in his excitement seemed completely genuine. She's not what I expected, his sister Jenny whispered as they cleaned up after cake. From the way you described her, I thought she'd be wearing a power suit and checking her phone every 2 minutes. She's changed, Mark said, realizing as he spoke that it was true. Or maybe she's just showing a side of herself that was always there. Or maybe, Jenny said with a knowing smile, she's trying to impress someone. Mark dismissed his sister's insinuation, but found himself thinking about it later as Katherine helped him carry the last of the presents to his car. Thank you for coming today, he said. Ethan was thrilled. I was happy to be included, she replied. It's been a long time since I've been to a child's birthday party. I'd forgotten how much fun they can be. There was a moment, brief but unmistakable, when something shifted between them. Standing in the parking lot with the afternoon sun casting long shadows, Mark saw Katherine not as his boss, not as the corporate ice queen, but simply as a woman who had shown kindness to his son, who had listened when he needed to be heard. Would you like to have dinner sometime? He asked before he could overthink it. Not to discuss work. Just, dinner. Katherine looked surprised, then pleased. I'd like that very much. 6 months later, Meridian Tech was featured in a business magazine as a model for family-friendly workplace policies. The article highlighted the company's improved retention rates, increased productivity, and the unusual partnership between its CEO and a senior developer that had sparked the transformation. By then, Katherine had become a regular presence in Mark and Ethan's home. She still drove her employees to excellence, still expected results, but had learned that the best way to get those results was to recognize that her team members were whole people with lives beyond their desks. And Mark had learned that sometimes, the worst mistake, like texting your demanding boss instead of your ex-wife, can lead to the most unexpected second chances. 1 year to the day after Katherine showed up on Mark's doorstep, she was there again, this time with a key of her own and plans to stay. Ethan had upgraded her status from "Dad's friend Katherine" to simply "Katherine," said with the easy affection of a child who has found another adult to trust completely. That night, after Ethan was asleep, Mark and Katherine sat on the porch swing, her head resting on his shoulder as they watched the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. Do you ever think about how different things would be if I hadn't sent that text? Mark asked. Katherine was quiet for a moment. I like to think we would have found our way here eventually, she said. But I'm grateful for your mistake. It forced me to see what I was becoming and gave me the chance to change course. From coldest boss to someone who remembers what matters, she finished for him. Someone who understands that success isn't measured in quarterly profits or market share, but in the lives we touch and the people we love. As they sat together in the growing darkness, Mark thought about the journey that had brought them here, from adversaries to allies to something much more. It hadn't been easy. There had been adjustments, compromises, difficult conversations about boundaries between work and personal life. But sitting here now, he couldn't imagine a different path. Sometimes life's wrong turns lead us exactly where we need to go. Sometimes our greatest mistakes become our greatest blessings. And sometimes, the person we least expect to understand our struggles becomes the one who helps us carry them. Thank you for watching our story. If you found it inspiring, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content that reminds us all of the unexpected ways life can change for the better. Remember, sometimes the messages we send out to the universe, even the accidental